While Portland just crossed $1 billion in waterfront development, a neighborhood's trying to stop 50 new apartments from getting built. That's where things stand this April around here. I've lived here my whole life, and I can tell you what's going on right now is going to shape the market over the next 10 years. So the big question is all this growth happening actually helping buyers or just making things even harder? Let's figure it out together. I need to start by making one thing really clear. The bidding war era in Portland is pretty much over, and if you've been waiting for a less crazy way into the market, this is what it looks like. Right now, I'd call this market buyer balanced. Sales to list ratios are sitting right around 100%. So those days of going 10 or 15% over asking just to win a house are largely behind us. Inventory has ticked up, and buyers have a little bit more room to breathe than they did 12 or 18 months ago. You know, as a realtor, I see this every single day. The energy in negotiations has also shifted. Sellers are still getting very strong prices, mid to upper 500s across a lot of the city of Portland, with the East End and downtown pushing well above that. But that panic buying feeling is gone. And we're coming back to this when we get into the park funding fight and planning board debate later. So if you've been sitting on the sidelines waiting for things to calm down a bit, this is your entry point. Now, it comes down to how long that window holds, and it all comes down to what's getting built and what's getting blocked this spring. But before we get into this, right now is when people usually ask me, okay, well, what does that mean for my situation? If you're serious about buying or relocating here, I can give you a straight read on what neighborhoods actually make sense for your timeline and your budget. My contact info is in the description below. Now, let's get back into what's happening on the ground. There's a version of Portland that people who left 10 years ago wouldn't even recognize. And right now, the clearest place you see that is on the eastern waterfront. The Portland Foreside development just crossed a major mark. The latest phase alone is valued at over $660 million, which pushes the total project well over $1 billion. And this is already under active construction. What's going on here is around 400 new homes across the development, including the Harbor Hill townhomes and apartments. On top of that, you've got a waterfront hotel, 50,000 square feet of retail, with over 150 slips that can handle mega yachts up to 630 feet. That's not something you really hear about tied to Portland, Maine. You've also got the Channel Mark, which is the waterfront condos with open layouts and private terraces overlooking Casco Bay. And then the Market, a year-round indoor and outdoor space with Maine-based food and beverage vendors, plus public plaza space. And in a minute, I'll connect how this scale of development ties into the planning board fight over the concert hall, because those two stories are directly linked. Now, this is a part a lot of people miss. A project like this changes who starts looking at the market. High-end waterfront inventory at this level pulls in buyers from Boston, New York, and beyond. And those buyers have real purchasing power, which means they're competing across the broader Portland market. That's a real demand driver. For the neighborhoods around the eastern waterfront, it sets a value floor that's not going anywhere. Of course, the billion-dollar headline gets attention, but what it does to the rest of the market around it, that's what really counts. And you'll see it pretty clearly when we look at what's happening on the other side of the city. This is one of the clearest tensions in Portland's housing market right now. You've got a project with over $1 billion behind it, already under construction, a waterfront hotel, a marina, and hundreds of new homes. And then you've got another project, just 50 apartments near Forest Avenue, tied up in court, with the site still sitting empty. Developer Alex Koop proposed two 25-unit buildings near Belfort Street. The timeline is ready, the site's already been cleared, but the neighborhood group called Friends of Belfort filed a lawsuit, and now everything is on hold while both sides wait on a judge. The lawsuit comes down to two main issues. First, it's traffic. A city traffic study says the project would add about 340 car trips per day to a narrow street that's already pretty busy, especially with kids walking to Talbot Elementary School. Second is an easement issue. The claim is that the developer doesn't have proper legal access to Forest Avenue. As of right now, the site just sits there. While the Foreside project moves because it has $1 billion behind it, while the 50-unit project near Forest Ave is stuck in court. The gap tells you a lot about how Portland's housing pipeline actually works. And this goes beyond just one project. It ties directly into a buffer zone debate and the park funding vote we're getting into right now. Every time new housing gets delayed, the pressure on the market stays high, even when things feel more balanced overall. There's a big debate going on at City Hall right now, and it could reshape part of downtown. The city council extended a pause on a new large music venue, anything over 2,000 seats, through September 4th. And now there's a proposal that would require 750 feet of space between large theaters in certain zoning areas. At first, this sounds like a technical planning detail, but this is really about one specific project, a 3,300-seat concert hall backed by Live Nation. The Portland Regional Chamber and local developers are calling this retroactive zoning. They argue that it's meant to shut the project down, even though it could bring in over $44 million a year. And then when you think about a venue of that size in the Old Port on a Friday night in October, it's a big deal. Hotels fill up, restaurants get busy, and the streets are packed. That's real money moving through the area. On the other side, neighborhood groups and the Maine Music Alliance are saying this is about getting development right. They want to protect the feel of the area and make sure one company doesn't lock in a decision the city might regret later. When we get to the end, I'm going to tie this back into the housing lawsuit and the waterfront development, so stay tuned. And you know what? I see this tension every single day. Portland wants to grow, but it also wants to hold on to what makes it Portland. These don't always line up. The moratorium runs through September, so this is one to keep an eye on. Right now, if you drive along the eastern waterfront near Ocean Gateway, what you see is surface parking and queuing lanes right where the city meets Casco Bay. Come back this summer, and it's gonna look completely different. The Harbor Common Project, Phase 1, has construction kicking off this spring. The whole stretch is turning into 3.5-acre public green space built as the city's front porch to the water. You're getting open lawn, waterfront promenade, and plenty of new public space to take the harbor. There's also a $150,000 set aside for public art tied to Portland's maritime roots, and the final name is still waiting on full city approval after the public naming process wrapped up in late February. Water access drives demand in any city, and Portland's waterfront has been real, not something built for show. Adding a high-quality green space right at the edge of the water makes the entire eastern side of the city much more livable. And if you've been watching the East End or Munjoy Hill, this is another reason that direction continues to hold. So the contrast between the Harbor Common and what's going on with Congress Square Park right now is pretty clear. And the funding fight we're about to get into shows you how complicated the city's approach to public space has become. There's a park right in the middle of the Portland Arts District, next to the Portland Museum of Art. It sits on one of the most walkable blocks in the city, and it's hosted over 200 events last year. And right now, the city still can't agree on whether to fund the final improvements. Congress Square Park has been waiting for a full overhaul for years. The design is done, city staff says it's shovel ready. The holdup is a capital spending vote set for April 13th, just a couple weeks away from shooting this video. There's a real pushback from the council, and at least 2 members have raised concerns. One of them is really frustrated because the city already approved major funding of this project back in 2024 and called it its last request. The tension here really comes down to what gets pushed aside to pay for it. This is the kind of decision that usually doesn't make headlines outside of Portland, but it says a lot about how the city is choosing to invest in itself right now. If the vote passes, construction starts this year. If it gets delayed again, a space that's already active starts to wear down. And if you're looking at buying in the Arts District or along Congress Street, this vote is a signal. It shows whether the city is willing to support the kind of everyday livability that keeps the area strong or not. Beyond the big projects, there's a quieter layer of activity that shapes what Portland actually feels like day to day. And some of it is worth paying attention to. Tempo Art, the group behind a lot of temporary art you've probably seen around the city, has an open call for its 2026 Catalyst program. The program funds site-specific art across public spaces around here. It's the kind of work that changes how a neighborhood feels when you walk through it. And because it's a consistent part of the budget, it builds over time in ways you start to notice at a street level. When you look at all of this together, you start to see how the city is pulling its focus. And one thing that really shows up is the economic impact coming out of the entertainment side, which brings us to the number one thing that surprised me. The answer to what's driving millions of dollars into Portland's economy every single season is pretty simple: hockey. A March 2026 survey by the University of New England put a real number on what the Maine Mariners contribute locally. The team injected at least $6 million into the economy during the 2024-2025 season, and total impacts could reach around $12.4 million when you factor in everything downstream. But the detail that stood out for me is over $3.3 million came from season ticket holders living outside of Portland. That's new money coming into the city. You see it in the Old Port, in the restaurants and hotels that fill up on game nights. and across local businesses as well that rely on steady foot traffic in the off-season. Professional sports teams are economic anchors, and Portland doesn't always get credit for having one. The Mariners pull out-of-market spending into the city every single season. The healthy downtown commercial district helps support the residential neighborhoods built around it, and the team is a real part of keeping that engine running. April's event calendar picks up right where the hockey season leaves off, and it doesn't slow down. For me, spring is really when Portland starts to feel like itself again. Restaurants start putting tables back out on the sidewalk, the harbor smells like the ocean again, and the city starts to feel like the reason you moved here in the first place. So April is that moment, and the music calendar is packed. Thompson's Point, the State Theater, and Cross Insurance Arena, a lot is going on. Allie and AJ kick off things at the State Theater on April 2nd. One Night of Queen is at Aura on April 15th, and April 19th is a big night downtown. Barry Manilow is playing what's called his final Portland show at the Cross Insurance Arena, and the same night, Ronnie Chang's at the State Theater. That's a pretty great Saturday, right? You'll want to be ready for that. On the community side, the city's Park Ranger Hike Club is launching its first hike on April 11th at the Back Cove Trail, starting at Payson Park Trailhead at 10 a.m. If you're new here or just want to see green spaces as everything starts to wake up, that's an easy way to get out and explore. The Portland Home Show is also happening April 11th to the 12th at Thompson's Point, which is for home projects, renovation ideas, and local vendors. Spring is really when buyers also start getting out into neighborhoods again. You see it way more than you do in January. If you're seriously thinking about Portland area, April is one of the best times to get a feel for what day-to-day life actually looks like here. Portland is growing fast, but what controls growth and how the city chooses to spend its money, that's what separates a market from long-time upside to one that just looks good at a glance. If you're planning a move into Portland or the surrounding area this year and want to understand how all of this affects your situation, send me an email at youtube@wvwre.com. I work with buyers and sellers in the market every single day, and I can break down what the numbers mean for you right now. I also linked a video where I go deeper into my 2026 real estate predictions. That's the bigger picture behind everything we just talked about.